Hey guys, subscribe for daily content, and if you're shopping for gear, make sure you check out the description for the newest items at some of the very best online retailers. There's also links for some of the items that I personally recommend. Thanks!
What's going on YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I've got another interesting knife review / knife overview to share with you guys. This is the Civivi Crit, which actually has a blade, and then it also has a multi-tool, which is kind of interesting. Now, a lot of you might be pointing out, didn't you already do this? I vaguely remember a review about the Civivi Crit. Yeah, just a few people saw it because I noticed, because I always read the comments, I had made a comment about being frustrated that the knife could only be carried with the blade tip down. Which I didn't like. I found that problematic for a number of reasons. I went on and on and on and complained about it, and people in the comment section said, dude, you can take the screw off and just rotate the scales 180 degrees. And I was like, wow, I'm an idiot. Yeah, that's true. And I had given the thing a negative review, largely based on this, what I thought was factually correct, that it couldn't be altered and that the factory positions were just dumb. So with that being the case, I took the review down, made a community post about it, which is still up. You can go read it. And I said, I was wrong. This knife deserves a fair review, so I will redo it and let you guys know down the road. Really glad I did. I've got a lot to say about this thing. Thanks so much to Civivi for providing this knife. You can absolutely pick this knife up. It's linked right down in the description, so you can check that out if you want to. Thanks to my generous patrons who are supporting me right now. There's a link for Patreon right down below. And please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. All right, we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna speed through this because there's really no need to get too hung up on these little details and specs in the beginning. Overall length with the blade out, coming in at about 7 1/4. Blade length is coming in definitely over 3 inches. Sorry for those of you who live in a state with a 3-inch blade law. 3 1/8, and then cutting edge is right about just a hair under 3 inches. I believe it is the same with the multi-tool. I don't think there's any difference, considering the space that it has to occupy. Yeah, it's essentially about the same thing. We're gonna keep the blade out. Not many people are going to use the thing like this. So do we need that type of measurement? I mean, okay, let me zoom out just a little bit. For those of you who are like, measure it the whole, right? If you're gonna like Batman fist it, it's about 10 1/4. That's kind of a useless measurement though. Like don't use it like this. That's not a good idea. So anyways, with the blade out, size comparisons with, let's just do a few. The Ontario Rat Model 1 and the Ontario Rat Model 2. Much closer to the size of the Rat 2. Let's put it up against the Spyderco Para 3 as well. There you go. And finally, the Benchmade Bug Out. Very much closer to the size of the Para 3 and Bug Out. Let's go ahead and do carry profile. So thickness up against the Spyderco Para 3. Yeah, this is pretty thick because it's got two, it's got a blade and a multi-tool in there, right? But it's shaped like a long, pill. So carry profile, not too bad this way. Length and height up against the PM2 and Para 3, right? Nowhere near the same size as either of those knives, but it's definitely thicker, and I think you will definitely notice it. So do with that information what you will. We have this is the tool. That's a problem with the knife, is that you might forget which is which. Blade steel, for materials, we're looking at Nitro V, which is fine, like Nitro V. We're looking at G10, and we are looking at steel with a steel liner lock. So, given that this has extra stuff in it, it's gonna weigh a little bit more than a normal knife this size. 3.56 ounces. Not terrible, but generally, right, if I were to, like, this looks a lot like the Civivi bow, right, with just the blade and the profile. So that knife's gonna weigh quite a bit less. 3.5 ounces is still 3.5 ounces though, which is not that much weight. It just depends on, if you've been carrying some of those thicker, like maybe the Victorinox Pioneer is fairly close to this, this may not bother you very much, right? Let's do blade stock thickness. Well, That's the tool again. Blade stock thickness on this guy is coming in at, sorry. Come on now, let's zero out. 0. There we go. 94 thousandths, very, very thin. The blade is absolutely ground in a way that's going to, it's going to slice. It doesn't have a whole lot of room to drop towards the cutting edge, but it is fully flat ground, so it's going to perform. Hardware check. Get out my tools. As per usual, my tools are very inexpensive and very recommendable. You can find them right down in the section of my description that talks about my tools. It's going to be T8. And for this screw right here, it's going to be T8, which is the pocket clip screw / pivot, whatever. Either way, you would think it'll be easy to get at those screws, right? These. So there you go. Anyways, let's, I'm actually going to go fairly quickly through this part of the review as well. Holding on to it is exactly what you'd think. You can get 4 fingers on it. This isn't a knife that I do a lot of heavy duty work with, but you can definitely get a full, if your hands are about my size, I wear an XL glove, or if they're a little bit smaller, you can definitely get a full grip on it. If your hands are truly XL, because the XL glove size doesn't really mean anything, guys. I'm sorry to shatter your big hand dreams. Doesn't really mean you have XL hands. If you're one of those guys or gals who has truly XL hands, you might have more of an issue with this. There's no real guard, so you do run the risk of running your finger up on the blade, but just pay attention. Don't use this for mega super hard. There's better knives for that. You should be okay. This is a liner lock that is okay to get at. They've cut it out just a little bit, so it's all right. It's not the most comfortable thing in the world. Front flipper works pretty well. I really wish that there was another means of deployment, maybe a little carve out right here in a nail nick or something like that. I don't like front flippers being the only option. The tool, which will, work. It's got a couple of different wrenches. It's got a seatbelt cutter, which, okay, bottle opener, flathead screwdriver / scraper, right? And then you've got inches, centimeters. Yeah, okay, kind of useful. It's what I was saying in the previous review is that the knives like the Victorinox Pioneer still make like way more sense. I mean, this is neat, and if you're just like wanting to carry something different, then okay, right? And, I mean, yeah, it has a pocket clip. There are modifications for Victorinox knives with pocket clips. There's also the little keyring pocket clips that you can get made in titanium off of eBay for like 15 bucks, I think. Those work. Maybe they're not because they're dingly danglies and not attached to the knife. Some people might prefer this. Okay, it just depends on what you need for your knife, right? This is okay. It seems a little bit gimmicky, right? Yeah, the blade itself, like I said, plenty functional, plenty thin, even though it doesn't have a whole lot of room to drop towards the edge. It's a very Civivi blade. Those of you who are familiar with Civivi know exactly what I'm talking about. The lockup on the blade is completely and totally solid. There's no pivot lash, and the detent is nice with no detent lash. Same thing with the tool. I would not pry with this. I wouldn't pry with any tool that's... Number one, it's so long. Like on my Victorinox Cadet, I've got that little, it's a little tiny flathead, and I've done a little bit of prying with it, but I don't trust the pivot to be strong enough to withstand any serious or even like medium serious prying. It's just not a good idea to do that with this. You're going to bend this out. You're going to bend out the pivot area. The whole thing is going to get wonky. Don't do that. Use a pry bar if you have to pry, or some fixed pry object, right? Yeah, probably more reserved for like maybe just a wide flathead screw, a little bit of scraping. It's not really even that great for that. There's really the tools that are on it are, excuse me, not really, I don't know if it justifies carrying a wider knife every single day. If I'm gonna carry something this wide, it seems like the stuff that comes on the Pioneer, for me, it makes a bit more sense. But then again, I don't use any of that stuff that often on a daily basis. What I generally do, honestly, is I've got a multi-tool like this down here with me in my office, and I've got another one in my truck, and then I use it when it's opportune. I use a blade far more often than I use tools like that, so that's just me, right? You got to think about your circumstances, what you use on a day-to-day basis, and whether or not this is going to be the right answer for you. There's no way to review something like this and just apply it to everybody. It's not possible. It would be stupid for me to try to do that. So anyways, yeah, it's all right. Let's get to the part about the pocket clip. So I'm going to do this with you guys because I noticed something when I tried to do this myself. What I'm going to do is I'm going to rotate both scales and see what all that entails, right? Because that means you'd be able to switch this and carry it tip up, tip down, right or left-handed carry, depending on your preferences for the blade and the tool. So let's pull this out. Keep going, keep going. This is getting there. I'm going to show you the other side of this. We're almost out. It seems like it's taking a lot longer than it should. And I think it's because we have a lot of free spinning stuff. I'm almost certain. Yeah, so here's the first issue that I ran into that made me really upset. This is a screw. Now, it has something in there that I think is supposed to keep it captive in some way. Yeah, there's a little lip of G10 there. It doesn't, it kind of works and kind of not. The problem is that screwing this back down, I mean, I can use my finger, right? Think about this. There's no head. Like, what tool is made for this? So screwing it back down this is all you can do, right? And then you have to get it to a point where it's going to catch on. I'm honestly not sure that I can do this for the rest of the review. Like, if I can get this down, this video might have to be edited to where I can get it. You understand what I'm saying is I have to screw this thing down with my finger and get it to line up with that lip and, you know, hope that the threads are the right tightness, right? So anyways, let's go ahead and get this side out. We're going to do this with both sides, and I'm just going to see if I can get it organically. I want to show you guys what it would be like to do this. All right, so that pivot, oh, see, now the whole barrel is wanting to come out there. So maybe, well, I got to take this off, though, to get the scale off. So there goes that other side of the pivot. And will this release? Okay, there's the pocket clip. Oh boy, oh, come on now, don't fly apart. That's gonna be the key here. Is it finally going to come out? Is it pulling the entire barrel out with it? No, okay, jeez, okay. So I want all of this to stay. Now I got this one out. Just trying to remember how these are. So this is up here, so I'm going to flip that to the other side. You really have to hold this thing together. So is this spinning now? Yeah, this is spinning. Hold on, let me show you. See? Look at that. The barrel spins, which is stupid. Okay, so maybe put this back in over here. I really need this to come out first so that I can use one of these pivots to hold everything steady so that I can screw this in. This is not a fun experience. This is kind of a super duper wet poopy experience so far. I do not like this. I don't want this to be, like free spinning stuff just ruins it completely. This doesn't want to come out. The entire barrel just keeps rotating. Is it finally coming? So sometimes we can make this work. But here's the problem. It looks as if possibly everything is wanting to fly apart now. This side is the whole pivot barrel. Is that was the case, huh? What was this? No, that can't be. This just got stuck to the pivot barrel. I'm glad I re-reviewed this. I don't like this. I don't like this. Help! Nick Shabazz, help! This is terrible! No! I don't even want to put this back together. Come on. This needs to be D-shaped. up here, the frames, right? The liners, the frame, all of this. That needs to be D-shaped. We have a pivot screw that is stuck to the pivot barrel. What I'm going to do is try to release the screw while I'm holding it here. Yeah. I can see the tip of the screw in there. This is not all one piece. It is not. This is meant to come out. Ah, right there. That is, this is supposed to come out. So, and I can also tell because when I screw this down, the other side of the pivot, both sides look identical. This is supposed to come out, and this is just the pivot barrel by itself. Now, you know, a lot of people say, well, oh, it just needs to be like this. This needs to be one piece. No, this needs to be D-shaped, and the frames, all of this needs to be D-shaped. Let me go back to my standard zoom here. This is just, I mean, I can put this back together, right? I mean, you can, I could just take this piece and flip it over, which I'll probably go ahead and do, and maybe, you know, hyperlapse it or something like that. But this sucks. Like if you want to if you want to flip a scale over, you know, you could just put the pivot. You could, you know, could do this, I guess. Or you'd have, and then on the other side you'd have two Civivi screws. I don't think that's a good idea, right? Changing the pocket clip, doing this, I just, what I'm saying here is that because of the pocket clip mounts, if you want to flip this over to the other side, right, you have to also, what you're doing is taking one of these sides, right, and you're putting it up here. On the other side would be another metal side, right? So you'd have to flip that back around, which means you have to take all of this stuff back out. This is not a maintenance sort of friendly knife. This is not something that I'm going to recommend that people deal with. I'm going to hyperlapse, put this thing back together with the pocket clip switch the way that I want it, because, you know, I know that it's possible. It's just frustrating. Yeah, otherwise we'd all be sitting here for way too long. So, one moment. Okay, so I got it. And let me tell you something. You know, I fully expect to get, you know, people in the comments going, well, you should have done it if you had done it like this, or if you'd have paid attention to where this. If that's what you're about to do, you're missing the entire point. There are knives that exist right now, folding knives that are substantially simpler to take apart, and it is largely due to a captive pivot system. This, on top of that, has, and I understand is the nature of the design, has all these parts that are nearly perfectly symmetrical. So you are, you know, having to pay attention to the position of the liners, which have very specific stop pin hole positions, the position of the in between, the lock bar, right, which goes in the middle, and then of course the final position of the scales. And it's not as simple as just like taking this off, flipping it over, and putting it back on, because you also have to alternate the sides of the pivot. In other words, the metal screw, if you want the pocket clip to stay on, has to be positioned over a pocket clip mount slot. And the Civivi screw, which you can see this one, is not fully down properly because it hasn't found that little notch. Hey, Metal Complex coming to you from after the video, because afterwards I went ahead and backed this pivot barrel out and got this Civivi screw on both sides to stay in. But I wanted to let you know, again, what you have to do is back this pivot out, right? So you would take this all the way out, and then I took my driver and pushed the pivot barrel up so that I could screw the Civivi screw all the way down and then rotate it to get it to, you can see here the Civivi, the C needs to be facing down, which is where it activates that little captive area that they tried to do. Then push it down and screw with it and mess with it until it latches, and then screw the screw all the way down. And again, that might work if this metal side of the pivot screw did not latch itself to the pivot barrel, which is always going to be a possibility unless the pivot barrel itself is D-shaped and can be, held captive by the frame. Back to the video. So if you rotate the scales, you also have to rotate the pivot. And if you take those out, then everything wants to come flying apart. Now there's of course a chance that you can hold everything together if one of your screws does not stay attached to the barrel, in which case you have to pull the whole thing out. It's still possible to hold the entire thing together. Your experience might be simpler than mine, right? You might be like, well, I pulled mine out, my pivot barrel came out, I held everything together. If it was captive, it wouldn't have been nearly as much of a problem, right? This whole Civivi logo being a screw thing, I mean, there's so many things that just make this such a mess to take apart. And what you guys didn't see in that entire hyperlapse was my first hyperlapse, where I screwed it up. I actually messed it up once, had to take it totally apart, look at the picture of what it looked like assembled again, and then put it back together. Now, if you enjoy doing stuff like that, or maybe you have, a better understanding of this thing, right? Or you're just more, I don't know, you have a better mind for stuff like this, then maybe you wouldn't have as much of a problem with it. I'm going to guess that the average person, right, who, that's Civivi knives are made for the average person. They're not going to have a good time with this. If you never have to take your knife apart, fine. But if you want to switch that, right, you want this to carry like this, which is how I've got it, tip up, you're in for a rough time. I do not recommend this knife. I'm sorry if that makes you frustrated. I did not have a good time with this. In any case, I do appreciate Civivi sending this in for me to take a look at. Please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do of course have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like, so check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on that Metal Complex logo right there and subscribe, because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.